All right, here we go. Oh, I don't even know if I should be podcasting right now, but we're all in this together, right? Roll the intro, I guess. What's up, everybody, and welcome to... That's my opinion! My name is BaconBearzz, and that's my opinion. Today, okay. Today is maybe, in the most recent history, one of my worst parenting days that has existed in a long time. But I have no other day to record this, so you guys are going to get this hot off the press, more raw emotion than I would like to give it, because I would have liked to take some moments and be able to, just sit down and collect my thoughts and collect anything. But, sometimes as parents, we don't get those opportunities because, you just have children screaming in your faces and holiday obligations and, life. So with that being said, there's a couple of things that I want to go through before we get started for housekeeping notes. As far as housekeeping notes goes, thank you guys all for welcoming my friend Jen. She's a great time. I really enjoy just the casual conversation that we're able to have back and forth. And also the reason that I wanted to have her on is just because we're experiencing the same things, but at different times, right? So she had her kids at, a different time than I did 18 years ago. And, it's nice to have these different conversations with different people. And I really just appreciate the warm welcomes out of you guys. Housekeeping is going to be answering any questions, answering any comments, or any callbacks that we needed to clear up from the last episode, just to make sure that we're all staying on the same page. And listen, I am just a person with a podcast. I am not a professional by any means. Unless it comes to hair, I am not a professional on any other level. So just know that about me. I'm on the internet. I say stuff. Sometimes I'm going to get it wrong. So the number one thing in the housekeeping is the math thing. I had said that I just learned if you add an odd and an odd together, you get an odd. If you add an even and an even together, you get an even. And if you add an odd and an even together, you get an odd. Actually, the only time that you get an odd is when you add an odd and an even. That'll always be an odd. Even, 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 odd, odd, even. Now, in my brain, when I was saying that out loud, that's what I was saying. But my mouth and my brain work separately. I just find it funny that that's the clip that gets the most traction, especially on YouTube. And I'm going to the highlight comment, which actually they deleted their comment and I think also blocked my channel. But my favorite comment that came from that was, how do I block this channel? We're sad to see you go, friend. So I got it wrong. I got it wrong in a bad way. I am pretty dumb, but not that dumb. So I did get it wrong, but just remember, when you're doing simple math, friends, it is odd, odd, even, 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 odd, even, odd. Okay? Thing number 2. I said I used to go to witchcraft stores because I got into witchcraft, in my early life and was reading books about it. And spirituality and things like that was something that I was really, really into, and trying to connect myself spiritually, as outside of being in the church. And I said witchcraft stores, but those are now actually called metaphysical supply stores. So I don't want to offend anybody or get anything wrong, but I do want to say that correctly. Metaphysical supply stores, not just witchcraft stores. It has been brought to my attention that turning down radios to find things or closing your eyes to listen to music is basically, quote unquote, turning off a sense to heighten another, close quote. Yeah, because they say when you lose a sense, your other senses are heightened, right? So that would make sense. Is like, I need to focus on this one thing. I need to be able to see this thing, or I really need to be able to hear. So when you need to hear something, you close your eyes because you're like, all right, I need to listen for whatever. Or if you need to see something, you need to turn down the music or let go of all the other distractions that are in the background. Housekeeping item number 4. Also, I want you guys to all thank Jen for this because she went out of her way to go, and I have the list of things that she got me, I would show you the phone, but we're not going to do that. But she went out of her way to find all of these items. Jen, thank you. And thank you for being so incredibly organized. So thing number 4 would be vivid dreams. I had said in the last podcast that I have vivid dreams about a lot of the things that I get hyper focused on, whether that's knitting or drawing or whatever that is. I tend to have my day tends to carry into my dreams, and I can never quite shut that off. So she had said that vivid dreams and dreaming about things can be due to sleep deprivation, which I do not have the greatest sleeping schedule due to my anxiety, but also due to my children. My son has a terrible sleeping schedule. I can post some of my sleep weeks on social media if you guys want to see them. They are absolutely awful. So that's great. Vivid dreams and dreaming about things can be due to sleep deprivation, anxiety, which I also have, and ADHD, which we all know I am undiagnosed. We'll get on that sometime this year, or maybe not. ADHD, you never know. And number 5, the song that we were singing poorly is Hold Me Now by the Thompson Twins, an English band that hit number 3 on Billboard 100 with that song in 1983. And I believe track number 2 on the Wedding Singer soundtrack. Okay, I was wrong. I thought it was number 2. Number 2 is actually Do You Really Want to Hurt Me by Culture Club. So I had that wrong, but Hold Me Now is track number 6 on the Wedding Singer soundtrack. So, but that is where I know that song from. So that would be a little housekeeping from the last episode. Before I get into today's episode, let me just tell you what happened today. And this is in the life of parenting. And what I've been doing is I've been mindful of the fact that I'm doing the podcast, right? And this is kind of an open diary for me to you, and then also to spark conversation and just talk to other people and do that, yada, yada. We've been there. We've talked about that. But my thing is, I want to be able to be vulnerable, right, with my feelings, and then also allow other people to be vulnerable, and also allow other people to know that these things exist outside of their own households. I think sometimes when we, have children or our parents or whatever, we get so isolated in our own worlds that we forget that other people are having the same problems that we are. And there's a lot of times where I'm on social media or I talk to other moms and they say something and I'm like, oh dear God, that happens to you too? Yes. Like I was talking to another mom. Her son is in my son's they're in the same special ed class together. It's not like it's my son's class, but I was talking to another mom. And, I was telling her about some of the issues that I was having and some of the hardships that I was having being a mom of an autistic son. And she's a little bit more ahead of me in the game because her son is a little older than my son is. And I said, do you deal with these things? And she goes, of course I do. She said, if it makes you feel any better, this is what happened to us this weekend. And then she goes into the story about something that her son did. And I was like, actually... I hate to laugh, but I was like, actually, it does make me feel better. And she goes, good. I hope it did, because she knows how that can feel. Back to the vulnerability, because I can't stay on one topic. And the fact that you guys stay here through a whole episode, listen, I can close it. Okay. I'm a closer. We know that if I start something, I'll finish it. We just don't know when. So here's the thing about the vulnerability and the having the podcast in general. I have found that I'm keeping sort of kind of like track of my emotions and things that I'm going through. And I want to be able to share these things with you. So I've been kind of writing in like a journal style, just these raw emotions when they happen so that I can convey them to you guys, and we could talk about them. Today, I was hoping that I could write these things down and then have a day to podcast so that I could process my own emotions, but I don't get that. So we're just going to see how this goes and we're going to let it fly. So yesterday, my son went to school and I took off the day, and I spent the whole day with my daughter, and we laughed and we giggled and we played, and we just did whatever she wanted to do, and it was great. It was a really great day. And then my son came home from school and he had a really great day at school, and he took an early bath, and the kids were in bed early, and we're implementing these new routines, which have been very helpful for our family. Everything was so wonderful yesterday. And I was like, you know what? Tomorrow I'm going to get up. I'll clean the house. I'll do everything that I have to so that we can go into the weekend and not have to worry about it. So we wake up this morning, and every once in a while, my kids, as soon as they wake up, before I've even had my first sip of water or coffee, they are whining and complaining about something. And I'm like, what? No, stop it. Like, my feet have not even hit the floor yet. Like, let me get up. Let me get my bearings. My children sometimes, if their eyes are open, their mouths are moving. Like, that's just the way it is. And it's hard. It's hard when before you've even really opened your eyes, you have somebody just like da-da-da, you know, and you're just like, you know, wait a second. Can I breathe? You know, so I was like, all right, what do you guys want for breakfast? I'm like, I only have 2 things that I have to do today. I was like, I need to make myself 3 things, I guess, but like make myself breakfast, or food doesn't count. But I was like, I just want to work out and I want to clean the house. And I want to do that early because it's supposed to be really nice today. And I want to go outside. We get through breakfast and it's great. And I go in to change my clothes in my bedroom. And I hear a crash from another room that doesn't sound like the crashes that I heard earlier of all of the bins being empty. And I'm like, what the hell is that? So I go into my daughter's room, and she has this little like reading area. So it's really weird how they did this in this house. So they have a closet with like these accordion doors. And then there was just like a clothing rod in there. So I'd put some shelves on there. And then to the other side, they have like this half closet, but it has no shelves. So we made that into like a little reading area for the kids. They can climb up and down in there, and they have like their own little clubhouse inside of her room. And they love it, especially my son. He likes being in very small spaces. So he loves going in there. I guess the ladder was down. He went into the closet, climbed up the shelves, and as he got up into the reading area, all the shelves came crashing down. I'm pissed. There's no other way to say. I'm like, why? Why? Just, I applaud your troubleshooting and your problem solving, but why? My house is already messy, right? And a lot of times I find myself not being able to get to the original messes because I got to clean up some stupid shit that is so unnecessary. None of this needed to happen. So now I'm upset. And I get to my son and I'm like, get out of the closet. And he's like upset because I'm upset. And I'm like, just get down in the closet. And then he's upset because he can't be in there. And then I'm upset because I can't explain it to him because he doesn't understand. But I'm like, get out of the closet. So I, get him and I get him down. And I'm like, all right, everybody go in the basement. I'm like, we're going downstairs. That's where I work out. So I'm like, we're going to go. I'm going to work out. We're going to take a breather. And I'm like, I now have to clean up this horrific mess because not only have all of the shelves come down, but in trying to get up, he helped himself to the clothing rod, which he took off, and all of those clothes and hangers then slid off the clothing rod. So we go downstairs. They know I am upset, very upset. And my daughter's like, Mom, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I am in fact not okay right now. I said, I'm very upset. And when and they know that I'm like super upset when I get kind of quiet. So I was like, when I am done working out, we will go upstairs and everybody will clean up. And she's like, okay, yeah, sounds great. I'll help you. And I'm like, okay, perfect. So I get through my workout. Kids are good. 30 minutes of peace, I guess. And I go upstairs And I have to start with the most overwhelming project first, because if I get through the other projects, I will look at my daughter's room and it will overwhelm me and I will give up. So I am the type of person that I need to get the most overwhelming piece done first, and then I can do everything else later. But if I don't do that first, that'll never get done. So we go into the bedroom and my son starts having meltdowns because he doesn't want me to clean up the mess. To which I start getting really mad. And I'm like, just get out of the room. Just get out. Go, please. Like, I have to get this done and I have to finish this. And he's crying and I'm crying. And my daughter's like, this room's a mess. We should clean it. And she's trying to clean it up and she's trying to put the babies in a baby bin, and he's having meltdowns because he's taking the babies out, and then she's getting frustrated because she's trying to help me, and it's just a mess. Everybody's a mess. Everybody needs to separate. So he goes to his room. She goes to his room with him. I start cleaning. And I power clean this room, and I took it as an opportunity to throw away a bunch of stuff in the closet or to donate or whatever it is that I needed to do, but to get stuff in the closet that doesn't belong in the closet out of this house. We're okay. The room is clean. I feel good. Okay. Everybody's done crying. Everybody's done melting down. I did try to go and console my son while he was crying, but sometimes he wants to cry by himself. He doesn't want you to touch him. He doesn't want you to be by him. So I left him alone. I gave him his space. I took my own space and I took a break and I had some lunch. What it comes down to is we don't have help. This journey of parenting falls on the shoulders of myself and my husband. And that's it. They say it takes a village, and that's because it does. And we don't have a village, partially because we have broken relationships, partially because of location. We just don't have a village. And it's hard when you're staring at the same faces. Somebody get me out of this prison, and it doesn't have anything to do with my kids or my husband. It's just, if you were in the house with anybody for an extended period of time, you're like, can I just do anything else? I get in these modes where I clean up the same messes and I look at the same walls and I make the same bed and I wash the same dishes and I hear the same sounds. I gotta go. And I'm sure my kids and my husband feel the same way about me. They hear me bitching about something, or they, whatever the case is. And I'm sure they want to get away from me as much as I want to get away from them. And everybody's just frustrated and they got to go. My sister called me and I was crying. She said, what's the matter? And I said, I gotta get out of here for a minute. I need a break. And she said, okay. She said, I'm going to do an Easter egg hunt with the kids today. And I was like, man, that sounds amazing. Also, please don't bring any more shit into my house. Like, my kids don't need any more toys. They don't need for anything. And she's like, no, I'm just going to come over and play with them for a little bit. And, you can do whatever you got to do. And I'm like, cool. So my sister comes over. She brings 100 Easter eggs. She brings them each of them, these beautiful bath bombs, because they love bath bombs in their little tubbies. And she brings them, a bunch of candy for the eggs. And she takes them outside and she hides all the eggs, and then she takes the kids outside and they go do an Easter egg hunt, and I'm able to get a couple minutes by myself. And this is great. I just need a reset every once in a while, and I can't get a reset. So anyways, my sister gives me a little bit of a reset, and I'm like, cool. And she's like, I got to go. I got some stuff I got to do, but I came and did this for the kids, and it was really nice. And my sister's significantly younger than me. I'm 37 years old, and my sister's going to be 22 this year. And she is very thoughtful. If I'm really in a pickle, like, I know that I can count on my sister, and then she'll be there. it just as my other siblings would. I know that if I were to call my brother or my other sister, I know we don't always have the same conversations or the same bonds, but I know that if I were to call any one of them in dire need at any time, they would show up. The other problem is I don't know how to ask for help. So, I'm just like, when people call, I just cry and hope that they show up. Because God forbid I just say, can you please come here and help me? Because I don't ever want to be, I don't ever want to infringe on somebody's time. But also, I got to get away. So anyways, my sister goes to leave and I tell my son, can you please give, your aunt a hug and say thank you? And if the kids don't want to touch or give hugs, that's fine. But you will say thank you. And my son, who is basically, so when I say nonverbal, my son is considered nonverbal. He does have some words. His language is emerging, but a 6-year-old on the spectrum, he is considered a nonverbal child. But he did say thank you. And, and then my daughter, who never at any other time in her life, she says thank you and you're welcome and may I please every day, all day. So she comes out and I said, what do you say to Ia for doing all these nice things for you? And she goes, I don't know. And I said, you say, thank you. And she goes, I don't want to. Okay. Tell your aunt, thank you. And she says, no. So my reset break did not last very long. And I don't know what to do with this, man. I don't know what to do with this. But I will tell you that I am not going to raise an ungrateful child. So my sister leaves and I said, you don't want to say thank you. That's fine. You can go sit in timeout. And she goes, okay. She goes and she sits in her room and she shuts the door. And I was like, what the fuck do I do here? What do I do? What do I do with a child who does not give a shit? She does not care. And I can hear her talking to herself in her room. So I go into her room and I go, what are you doing? She goes, I'm reading myself a book. Now, this girl is 3 and I try every day to, have understanding and have patience and try to talk to her. So I go into her room and I go, what are you doing? And she goes, I'm reading myself a book. And I said, nope, that's not what timeout is. I said, timeout is nothing because I need you to think about what you did, right? So I make her put the book away and then I pull her into the dining room and I put her in the dining room chair there. And I said, you're going to sit in this chair and I'm going to need you to call your aunt and tell her thank you. Because when somebody gives you something, you say thank you. And she goes, no, I'm not doing it. And I was like, okay, well, you can sit in the chair until you change your mind. And she goes, okay. And she sat in the chair. And I was like, okay, now we're having a battle of the wills. You sit in that chair, I'll sit right over here. And we'll sit in here together in silence. And we did. It was the wildest thing. I was also tethered to a chair because, they say if you ground your kids, you are also grounded because you got to make sure that you follow through with the punishment. But how do you discipline a child who doesn't care? And then I'm like, pick and choose your battles. But if you pick and choose your battles, am I raising a monster because I'm allowing her to get away with this? And we don't spank our kids. But I'll tell you, every once in a while, I'm like getting damn close because I feel right now, I'm like, I think that's the only thing I have left. Just one wooden spoon tap. I don't. But, I understand. And you don't spank your kids. And it's funny because I've had this conversation with my sister. But my sister had said to me one time, and it was funny because she said this to me as her and I were having an argument. And she goes, why don't you spank her? And I said, would it be okay for me to hit you right now while we're disagreeing? And she goes, no. I go, that's why. It's not okay to hit people when you're not agreeing. It's not okay to hit people when you're mad. And it's not okay for giant people to hit little people. But I'll tell you, every once in a while, I'm like, oh, sis. Ooh, one day. I'm like, and I find myself having to walk away because I'm like, I gotta go. And it's hard. I will tell you, she sat there for a long time, twiddling her thumbs. So finally, we sat together and we hugged. She was crying. She got to a point where she was crying, and that's not what I wanted. I didn't want to make her cry. I am trying to prove a point, but not by, making a child cry. And we sat together and I told her, I said, when you receive a gift from somebody, you have to say thank you. You don't have to hug them. You don't have to kiss them, but you do have to say thank you. You have to acknowledge that somebody gave you a gift. And she said, okay, Mom. And I said, are you ready to call your aunt and tell her thank you? And she said, no. And I was just like, you know what? Also, I applaud that. You're 3. Isn't your brain, aren't you like a goldfish? Don't you forget everything within a matter of 5 minutes? This kid remembers everything. She remembers everything. Anyways, the resolution was, I told her that she wasn't allowed to play with any of the items, the bath bombs, the candy, any of the things that her aunt brought for her, until she said thank you to her aunt for bringing them to her, because she didn't have to do that. She didn't have to go out of her way to do that. But what do I do with this? What do I do? Where do I go from here? And that's the thing. And then I just have these flash forwards until she's 15. When I'm like, you can't go out with your friends and she's like, no, and just leaves the house. What do I do? There's a lot of people out there like, just beat her ass. I don't feel like assaulting my child. I don't want to do that, but I don't want to get there. But sometimes I'm like, this girl's going to burn this house down. It's the wildest thing. And today was, I'm not proud of some of my parenting moments today. I yelled a lot. And I'm like, what is going on? How did we get here? We were doing so good. And it takes one, I shouldn't say it takes one day to unravel it all. It takes multiple days because my kids have been on some wild ass feral shit for days. And believe me or not, my kids get on some bullshit when there is a full moon. About 3 days before and about 3 days after. And the other thing, sorry to the men that are listening to this podcast, but I'm also starting my period. I cried all fucking day. Everything. I just cried. I cried. Speaking of crying, I wrote about, parenting and about my son. And today I wrote living as a mother to an autistic child. Because the problem is I find it's not just the things that he does that set me into sort of a spiral of impatience and uneasiness. But it's when I'm reminded of the fact that he's autistic that gets me out of sorts. And it's not that I ever forget that my son is autistic. I know that he's autistic every single day, right? But there's these weird times where we start getting into such a good flow that you're sort of reminded of how big the deficit is. And when those things happen, I feel like the rug is being pulled out from me again. So I'll read this to you. If I start crying, it's been a rough day and I have my period, so deal with it. I'll read you what I wrote and then, we'll just break it down from there. I posted a TikTok where my son had climbed into the closet and the shelves broke and it was a mess. And I couldn't get to the other things that needed to be cleaned in my house because my son, unsupervised, can be quite chaotic at times. He's never being bad, but sometimes his brain works in destructive ways or his actions cause chaos. Let me explain. We have bins with toys that are labeled and organized specifically in a way where like toys go in that bin, such as all the cars go in one bin, dinosaurs go in another bin, and so on and so forth. It is very nice to have them organized that way, but we also have to keep them that way. Because if they're mixed, my son will dump the buckets. Because he then needs to see every piece that's in that bucket. So if you have a dinosaur bucket and there's 3 cars in the bucket, he has to dump over the bucket. because he has to see every piece then that's in that bin, the toy bin. Whatever set it is that he's working with needs to be complete. All the pieces need to be there for his brain to be able to function. And one toy being out of place in these bins can throw him off, and then the bins get dumped, which causes for, a lot of toys. So actually one of the things that we did that helped us was we eliminated a lot of the toys. If the toys didn't have finished pieces, we got them out of the house. And we went through a spring break cleaning out all of the toys. Because in our house, less toys works better. So the bins get dumped, and sometimes he allows us to clean up the bins and even helping us clean up in the process. I do have to say that a lot of times my son helps us clean up, and it's awesome. He understands that if we take it out, we got to put it back. But sometimes cleaning up the toys will send him into a meltdown. And he doesn't want you to put the toys away, or he can't. There's something about it that he can't let you put the toys away. They just have to be that way. It just has to be that way. And for my husband and I, who would love to just have a clean, peaceful house, that doesn't work the same way for him for whatever reason. And this is where the language barrier gets really frustrating, because he can't tell us why it feels that way, or why it bothers him, or why he can't function if the toys are in or out of the bin, or why... Whatever the case is, he can't say that to us. And I can't explain to him that if you put the toys away, they can come back out. They're there to play with. They're yours. They're not going anywhere. So if we clean up the toys, we risk him having a meltdown. And I don't want to send my son into a frenzy and essentially torturing him because he needs things to be a certain way, because that's how his brain functions. I can't tell you why that happens, and neither can he, which is insanely frustrating because it prevents us from finding an alternative. It would be better if we even had an alternative, like, hey buddy, what if we put the toys in this bucket and then you put them in your room? For peace of mind and a peaceful house, a lot of times I'll wait for him to go to school so that I can clean everything up. An example of the actions that cause destructions would be the closet. The ladder was down, so my son, using his problem-solving skills, opened the doors and climbed the shelves to get to the book area, causing the shelves to fall and everything to be on the floor. So instead of being able to just take my time cleaning my already messy house, I needed to start in the most pressing area first, which never needed to exist. And the reason that I'm telling you all of this first is because I have made this statement before, that I regret having kids. And people always look at me like I'm an asshole instead of asking me why. And I'll let you go ahead and pass your judgments now, and you can type whatever you want in the comment bar. When you're pregnant, all you ask for is a healthy, happy baby. It's literally the only thing you want. I don't care if it's a boy. I don't care if it's a girl. I don't care if it's blonde. I don't care if it's green-eyed, blue-eyed. I just want happy and healthy. And being first-time parents, it never dawns on you that really anything other than that could be a reality, which sounds so weird. So our doctor had asked us, because they're required to ask you, when you're pregnant, what are your limits, right? Like, when would you terminate a pregnancy? And my husband and I had never discussed that. We were trying to get pregnant. We got pregnant. Why would we ever need to terminate this pregnancy? And the doctor said, well, there are, health concerns where people would terminate a pregnancy. And I was like, oh, that never dawned on me. And he said, what about like Down syndrome? And I was like, no, I would not terminate a pregnancy for Down syndrome. And one of the reasons that he was asking me that was because the follow-up question then would have been, do you want to get an amniocentesis to find out if the baby has Down syndrome or not? And I was like, no, I don't need to know. I don't need to know, because my baby is my baby and we're going to have it. And everything was fine. I feel like a piece of shit because I asked for a happy, healthy baby and I got that. And I still have complaints. They're not with my son, which is the funny thing. My son is happy and he is healthy, so what's the problem? Well, the problem is I have no way communicating with a person that I love more than anything in this whole world. I am no resource. I have no previous experience. I just have love, and to be honest with you sometimes, I don't know if it's enough. A quote that really upsets me is, "He chose you." A lot of people say that your children choose you before they get here. He was given to you for a reason. And what reason? Because I literally have zero assets here. I got a job with no qualifications. And that's the thing, right? There are a lot of people who are parents who shouldn't be parents. There are a lot of parents out there with zero qualifications. There are a lot of parents out there who don't want to be parents. I wanted to be a parent. I wanted to be a mother. And I wanted to be the best mother. And I was put into a position where I have zero answers. I find at times that my patience is so sucked up with him and trying to be calm with him because he doesn't understand that I have even less patience for my daughter. So yeah, sometimes I regret having kids because I thought I was capable of being a better mother. You know what's funny is my daughter is neurotypical. She's a regular kid, developing the way that neurotypical kids do. And I think the even more frustrating part is I don't have answers for that shit either. I was like, if I just give her what I needed, this will work. And instead, she's like, fuck you. And she's like, no, I don't want to, and it's like, help me help you. They deserve a better mother. And no matter how hard I try every day, there are days I am incredibly incapable of giving them that. And spare me the "you're a good mom" or "you're doing a great job." People say that as encouragement, but I can't hear it. I can't hear it sometimes. Sometimes people will be like, "You're a good mom." And I'm like, sometimes I feel like they mean it. And I'm like, thank you. That feels nice. But most of the time people are like, "You're a good mom. You're doing a good job." And I'm like, "You're just saying this so I won't swan dive off my own roof." Like, I talk to God a lot. I ask him why he would give me an autistic son and none of the skills. I ask him all the time, why would you do this? Why would you give my son to a person like me? I've never been around a child like him. I don't know children like him. I don't know people like him. I didn't even know, I never knew what speech therapy was, or speech delay, or occupational therapy, or physical therapy, or IEPs, or 504s, or teams at school, or modified learning programs, or any of these things that I know now, which trial by fire, I have had no previous experience. My son needs help, and I want to help him. And I mean, we're trying the best that we can. And, we go to all the school meetings and all the school functions, and we have a great relationship with his therapist and his teacher. But I feel like he needs more a lot. And I feel like I can't give him that. And it's not because I don't want to, because I want to, because I would. I want the best for him, and I have no idea how to provide it. There's a sense of peace with my daughter because as of right now, she's on track to live a life that we would deem quote unquote normal. But my son, every day is so different, and the future is gray. With my daughter, I see her growing up and hanging out with her friends and driving a car and going to school dances and, doing whatever she does at school, and eventually going to maybe college and moving out on her own and finding somebody she loves and working a job that she loves and living a life. And my son, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if my son will ever drive a car. I don't know if he'll ever be able to live on his own. One of the things that I grapple with every day, I don't know if I'll have to put my son in a home. I never had a baby thinking of if I would have to put them in a home. When I had my first baby, I didn't know what the baby was going to be. And I had dreams of we would read books and we would ride bikes and we would have conversations and we would do all those things. And I had a baby and I can't speak to him. I don't know his goals. I don't know his dreams. I don't know his favorite color. Will he drive? Can he stay in public school? Is he going to have to go to an alternative school? Will he ever live on his own? How does he survive if we don't exist? What happens to him if we both as his parents don't exist? And that's the other thing. Thank God that I have the husband that I do, because I couldn't imagine going through this journey with a partner that wasn't supportive and a partner who didn't love our son as much as he does. Because I know that not everybody has that. I've talked to other moms and, you know, their counterparts aren't always supportive, you know, and then at any point in time, you know, if something happens to us now, obviously I'd, you know, be worried about my kids because they're kids. But like if we get to 25, you know, and my daughter exists as an adult and we don't, I mean, I feel like she would be okay, hopefully, you know, but for my son, I don't know what that looks like. Our job as parents is to give our kids the skills to survive this world, but for each of my children, that looks so wildly different. We acknowledge and celebrate their successes, but with my son, even though we acknowledge his successes, we also grieve because he's so delayed compared to his neurotypical peers. And I thought that the grieving process would get better, but it never does. And it's a cruel joke in itself because we start working together in this house and we get into a flow and everything really starts going well. Everything. We'll get into these just flows and everybody is helpful and they're doing their parts and we're happy. We're a happy house. And then we get the balls to sign them up for something like jujitsu. Because I did that dumbass shit. And the wound is just ripped open again. No scar tissue, right? Nothing. You just start all over again. This whole grieving process starts all over again. I signed both of my kids up for jujitsu. And I thought, you know, my daughter loves wrestling, so she would really like it. And, you know, and then for my son, I was like, you know, this will be great for his gross motor skills. He loves physical touch. He loves wrestling. It'll burn off some energy. He'll be able to follow the directions. And we actually found this place where one of the jujitsu coaches was a special ed teacher. And I'm like, this is going to be amazing. And it all made sense. This is going to be awesome. And then we got through 3 classes and I had to pull him out because I was leaving in tears every day. You know, there were adult parents staring at him with a disgusted look on their face, as they do. He couldn't follow what the class was doing. He was too overstimulated, you know, so on and so forth. But we don't realize, I guess, how different he is until he's around a group of his neurotypical peers, you know, because his life is normal for us. And his successes are so huge that for us, because they look like leaps and bounds, we're like, yes, you're always, and he's always shown us, as history has shown us since he's been alive, he will always move forward. But when you put him up to a neurotypical counterpart, it's hard. It's hard. It's hard to watch. When I was going through getting him diagnosed, I would have play dates with other kids. And I found myself crying in the play dates. Or leaving and crying. And I had to stop having play dates because I couldn't handle watching neurotypical children develop. And my friends who were having kids after my son was born, even though my son was older and I would watch their kids, it was hard for me to watch these children develop and hit, you know, their normal milestones and hit really talking was the big one. To hear my friends' kids call them mama or say, I love you, it's hard. It's hard. And then I had my daughter and I got that from her and that was so special from her. you know? So, I mean, in those moments with my daughter not lost on me, it's difficult. And it's weird because it's like, I don't want to be jealous of my friends. And I'm not jealous in a way where I'm like, oh my God, like you have that and I don't. It's not like that. It's like, will I ever have that? Do I get to experience that? All these things that I thought that were going to be normal for us as a family don't look that way. So you grieve then what that looks like too, you know? It's even harder when other parents stare at him with disgust. Which, let me tell you something. If you have a neurotypical child and you come across a neurodivergent child in your group, if you stare at them, we see you. We can feel your dagger eyes and your downturned mouth because you think our children are just being bad. We can see you from a mile away. We can feel it when you stare at our children. We can hear your whispers when you're pointing out our children to your friends or whoever you're there with. And just so you know, it makes us feel like shit. We long for our kids to do what the group is capable of doing. And I'll tell you, adults are way worse than their kids. Don't get me wrong. I don't want my kid to be neurotypical. I'm not saying that at all. I don't want him to be like the other kids. I just wish he could follow directions or tell me why he's crying or why he's overstimulated, how I could help him. If my son was different, he wouldn't be the most loving little boy who has ever roamed the earth. My son has never known a stranger. He shows all of his love and acceptance through physical touch, and he's a sensitive little boy. He can feel when you're upset. His empathy is insane. When you're happy, he's happy. When you're sad, he's sad. When you're angry, he's not angry. He doesn't get angry very much. He gets frustrated, but not angry. But he can feel it. He picks people out of a room. People that he meets for the first time. If he were to walk into a room of people he didn't know, he would be like, you, me and you, best friends. I like you for some reason, unbeknownst to us. And he will climb in their lap and he will just sit there. I was going through an airport. I was pregnant and I had gotten onto a plane and I had to put my son's car seat on the plane. And all these people were bitching at me and I'm sweating and I'm 5 months pregnant. And they're like, oh my God, a car seat. Yeah, I had to put a car seat on a plane to strap my kid into. Not for him, for you. So that he would sit there for 2 hours on the plane. Bitch. I still remember her. I'll tell you that story later. But anyways, as I'm on the plane and I'm putting this car seat into the seat on the plane, my son disappears. And I'm like, shit, where did he go? And I look up and 2 rows behind me, this woman is just holding him. And he is hugging her and his head is just laid on her chest. And I just looked at her and I go, I am so sorry. And she goes, no, please take your time. This is like the 5th time that this has happened to me. But she said, please take your time. I can't tell you how much I needed this today. And she just held him. There was another time where we were walking down the street and the mail lady was sitting in her truck and he was looking at the truck. And she goes, hi, how are you? And he just stood there and she kind of looked at me and I said, he can't talk. He doesn't talk. And she goes, oh, okay. And so she waves at him and she goes, hi. And he runs up in the mail truck and he climbed in her lap and he hugged her. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And she goes, I needed this. I don't know how he knows, but he knows. And I wouldn't have him any other way because he is the best boy, you know? He is the greatest little boy. And I wish I could have a little piece of his carelessness, not carelessness, but his carefree. He doesn't see how people see him. And he doesn't care. When we left jujitsu and I felt those other parents and I saw them staring at my son, I left crying. My son did not give a shit. He ran around the mats and threw cones, happy as a clam. I wish I could have that. You know, they say dance in the rain like nobody's watching, and that's what he does every day. He is just his full, authentic self. But I am so protective of him because he doesn't see it and because he is such an amazing boy that when somebody looks at him the wrong way, I just want to be like, fuck you, man. I can't tell you how many times I'm walking. All right, here's an example. We're walking down the hallway at my son's school, and there was like a little carnival going on, and there is a gentleman sitting in a motorized scooter, and he's, just sitting there off to the side, and he is staring at my son. And let me explain something to you. When you stare at something with distaste, it shows on your face. Your eyebrows are furrowed and your mouth is turned down. And he is watching my son walk down the hallway. And I was behind my son because my son was with friends of ours. And I wanted to just look at him and be like, he's autistic. You're an asshole. But I didn't, because why? When I got my son diagnosed, they had a parent liaison there, and her daughter had Down syndrome. So I really liked the way that they had it set up. When you go to this place that we got him diagnosed, they have the doctor, they have all the therapists, and then they have a parent liaison. And the parent liaison is there only to help you get through this journey. And I was talking to her because at the time I was struggling a lot with the guilt. I said, do you feel guilt? Her daughter had Down syndrome. And I said, do you feel guilt? And she said, every day. And I said, how do you get through it? And she said, well, some days I just wake up and my daughter has Down syndrome. And fine, that's what we do. She said, and some days you'll wake up and you'll want to explain it to everybody because you're ready for that. And she said, and some days you'll just wake up and you'll want to give everybody the middle finger. And that was one of those days. Props to me, I didn't. In an elementary school, I did not flip off a man staring at my autistic son. I should have, but, I didn't. And, but it is true, because you never know which day you're going to get me on. He just lives in a world that was never made for him to exist in comfortably. And he's just supposed to get with the program, but he can't. And instead of people understanding that his brain functions differently, they just stare at him and ask, why should my kids suffer because of X, Y, and Z? This has actually been something that has been said to me in, a setting where we've signed my son up for a group activity, is why should my kids suffer because he needs extra attention? Which I can understand both sides of the coin, because I also have my daughter who is neurotypical, but that would never be my response. And your question shouldn't be with me. Your question should be with these facilities then, of why don't they offer programs for special ed kids? And what does that look like? Should I pay extra because my son has a little added spice? What does that look like? And why should your kids suffer? If you think that your child is quote unquote suffering because a child who navigates the world differently than them is in the same vicinity as them, then that says more about you than it does about my son. And maybe teach your child how to be a friend, how to ask questions, how to live outside their own bubble. And honestly, it's never the kids. The kids will just be like, hey, why doesn't he talk? Why does he flap his hands like that? And I'm like, well, it makes him feel better. It makes his body feel better when he flaps his hands when he gets excited. Oh, cool. I remember I was at a park and a little girl was trying to talk to my son, and he couldn't hear her, and she had come up to me and she goes, does he not want to play with me? And I said, why do you say that? And she goes, because I'm asking him if he'll play with me, but he won't answer me. And I said, well, he has trouble talking. And she said, why? And I said, I don't know. He has some trouble speaking. I said, but if you show him what you want to play with, maybe he'll want to play with you. And she goes, oh. She had 2 cars, and she brought my son a car, and they played cars together. And that was it. Kids have openly been like, why doesn't he talk to me? Why does he flap his hands? And as the parent of an autistic child, I welcome questions, because curiosity allows for understanding, and understanding allows for acceptance. As an adult, if you see something different with a child, I would bet that 9 out of 10 parents would welcome a question instead of you guarding your child and keeping them away from mine because you think it's contagious. The point is this: I have no idea what I'm doing with children in general. None. I have 0 ideas. And then you add the extra layer of pizzazz with autism, and I have no idea what to do. I've joined groups and I've talked to doctors and therapists, but each case is so unique, it's exhausting sometimes. And a lot of times I just want my kids to be happy and find success in whatever that is and whatever brings them joy. Having my son has taught my daughter how to stand up for people, stand up for what she feels is right, which has been neat to watch. It's taught her compassion. It's taught her patience. It's taught her how to share her space with somebody who's not like her. It's taught her acceptance with somebody who is not like her. It's taught her so many things that I could have never taught her without him. And I think that's such a valuable lesson, especially for our children. And my son wants the same thing that everybody else wants. He wants to be happy. He wants to be loved. And he wants some pizza. The boy loves some goddamn pizza. Like he just, and he just wants to live his life. And it's so hard as his mother because we don't have a world where he can just exist, right? Without judgment. But what a brain to live in, where you could just not give a fuck about the judgment, where you could have a whole room of people staring at you and you're like, I'm going to flap my hands and jump on my tippy toes because that's what makes me feel good in this moment. And I wish I could have a little bit of that because that would be amazing. And he's such an amazing teacher. And I've learned so much from him as a person. And it's crazy. But yeah, I often think about having children and why I shouldn't have them and why, it's not a pity party and it's not a phishing scam where I'm trying to look for compliments, but I wanted my children to have the best. I want them to have the best everything. I want them to have the best everything. And that includes the best mother. And there's a lot of times where I feel like I'm struggling to give them that. And sometimes with my daughter, I get moments where she does really cool things out in the, world. And I'm like, okay, I think I'm doing my job all right. And then there's sometimes where I'm like, shit, I fucked this one up. That was my Dear Diary moment for today. I had another one, but I'm running on an hour 23. It's wild, man. It's a wild ride. I wasn't going to podcast today. I actually almost skipped it this week. And my husband was like, go downstairs and just be by yourself and do what you want to do. And I'm really glad that I came down here because it is really nice to talk and get these feelings out and do these things. But I'm also really glad that I get to give you guys like a feeling inside of like, I don't know what it's like to be in here, I guess, in my brain, because it's messy. It's very messy. But being a parent is hard. And if you're trying your best, I can only assume that, you're doing a good job. Because I think we're all just differently trying to do the best that we can. And we're all trying to do better than what came before us. And, that looks different for everybody as well. Today was a hard day. It was a hard day. But it is my kids' bedtime. And I am going to go try to enjoy the favorite part of my day if they'll behave, which is we lay in bed and we watch a little bit of a movie before we put them to bed. And I would enjoy doing that with them. With that being said, the question for the podcast today is, if you are a parent, what do you struggle with the most? What's your biggest struggle as a parent that you find that you wish you could be better at? With that being said, obviously, every time I podcast by myself, I'm going to fucking cry. What a nightmare. God, I hate this. But my name is BaconBearzz. And I should change this to "This is my crying show." But my name is BaconBearzz. And that's my opinion.